Otherwise, I've been on the fence for a while, trying to learn as much as possible from here. I still haven't gained a clear perspective on my own marriage, so I will go ahead and describe the situation and hope for your honest feedback. The basics. I'm 46. My wife is 44, and we have 2 kids, both in high school. I work as an engineer, and my wife is in healthcare. We've known each other since high school, but started dating in college. It's been a wonderful 19 years, even though the last year hasn't been my favorite. My wife and I are both friendly, hardworking people. We generally enjoy our jobs and have a good circle of friends. Our kids are our top priority, and we are very proud of them. I don't care if it's a cliché, but my wife and I are also best friends, and we didn't date many other people before getting together. I wouldn't be happier with anyone else. So, what's the problem? Tweets. Over a year ago, my wife had her hours cut back at work without warning, and she took it badly. There were a couple of months where she seemed listless and unsocial, and she may have been experiencing mild depression. I was worried, but fortunately, my wife took steps to climb out of the hole. She started going to the gym, which was a first for her. She also used the extra time away from work to take local classes in cooking, computers, and other subjects. Finally, she got into reading a number of self-help books, most of which dealt with the secret and law of attraction. This seemed to solve the problem. However, this is where my confusion starts. My wife is clearly happier now, but could her newfound happiness be a threat to her marriage? The most obvious change in my wife comes from her regular workouts. She has dropped 40 pounds and is in great shape, which is a big development since she was never in great shape even when we were young. As a man, I do get certain benefits from this situation. I am more physically attracted to her and more inclined to plan romantic evenings. Our love life has always been affectionate, but not necessarily hot. I think it's good to have a little more chemistry in the mix. There's also an emotional benefit for my wife. She is normally a gregarious person, but over the last year, she's also become more confident and assertive, which are new qualities for her. She now enjoys putting together nice outfits, both for work and casually, and a lot of them are based on her workouts at the gym. She started with yoga, then Pilates, and now Zumba. At this point, I've kind of lost track, but I know her classes require Lululemon-type clothing, which has led to her wearing yoga pants and tank tops outside of the gym as well. She even wears sweat pants to Starbucks, the supermarket, and other places where she's working out. The selling point of Lycra gym clothes is that they tend to really flatter a woman's rear end and legs. After losing weight, my wife excels in both departments. I'm not necessarily complaining, it's just an odd situation to wrap my head around. Overall, you could say that my wife's lifestyle changes mainly revolve around health and personal fitness. She doesn't seem overly interested in makeup, jewelry, handbags, or material things. I've only noticed a few shoes with taller heels or fancier pairs of underwear. That might not even count, since she hardly ever wears those. My wife did get a haircut over the holidays, shorter, sportier, with a few blonde highlights, but otherwise, her focus is on eating well, going to the spa, exercising, stretching, moisturizing, and doing whatever it takes to feel healthy. On this side of 40, it's hard to blame my wife for wanting to feel as youthful as possible. My only concern is that her new lifestyle could be interfering with her naturally beautiful personality. Here's where I start to sound crazy. I'm worried there might be a dark side to some of these books, classes, and philosophies that claim to be about self-help. For example, the motivational phrases my wife has started using, like happiness is a choice or we make our own destiny. Do they sound positive? Yeah, are they kind of true? Sure, but there can be a judgmental aspect to them as well, like when my wife tells me we can do anything we put our minds to. A more serious problem involves our kids. Since they were born, my wife has been an exceptional mother. Her caring personality translates easily to parenting. As I mentioned before, my son has difficulties at school, so I'm grateful that my wife can be so attentive with the kids. Other self-help phrases that apply to this situation include I need to make myself a priority, and I'm no good to anyone else if I can't take care of myself. The result of such attitudes, apparently, is that my wife now has less time to do the little activities our kids used to depend on her for. My job is pretty rigorous, but we've always managed to divide our parenting duties equally. Now it feels like I'm taking on more responsibilities at home while my wife is putting in fewer hours at work. Her logic is that she has more energy when she spends time exercising, going to the spa, seeing friends. Afterwards, she can be a more invested, effective parent. Makes sense. But I'm not sure it does. My daughter's trying to be understanding about it, but my son, who's accustomed to more support from my wife, is getting confused. A less drastic change in my wife's lifestyle. Meanwhile, that still feels weird. Involves stuff like music, iPods, computers, etc. It would be a stretch to call either me or my wife hip. My wife's favorite band is U2. Despite working in a technical field, I don't use Facebook. Until recently. My wife was no more sophisticated in this regard than me. Gradually, though, she has developed interests that include new music, gossip sites, Facebook, and so on. Even if it seems harmless, I feel excluded when my wife sings along to a band I don't know or checks funny messages on Facebook. Just using her iPhone has become a sore point for me. My wife didn't get a cell phone until 2007, but she will frequently zone out of our conversations now to type on her iPhone. I know everybody uses one these days, but I can't help feeling snubbed at moments like that. My wife has also made new friends at her classes, from what I hear. They are women our age who have their own husbands and families outside of class. My wife has begun to socialize with them. She might watch a movie with one of them over the weekend, or they'll grab a coffee or drink together. Because they aren't in our usual circle of college friends or married couples, it's hard to just invite myself along. I probably wouldn't enjoy drinking coffee with married women and discussing movies. But I do feel badly about not hanging out with my wife as much. At the same time, there's no sign of my wife behaving inappropriately. She always comes home at the end of the night, except when she has to leave town for work or for baby showers, etc. If my wife does come back late after getting a drink, she'll take a shower before climbing into bed. I'm usually asleep by then, so there's no way I can notice anything incriminating. My son has complained that my wife's jacket smelled like smoke or wine the next morning. I explain that's what happens when you go to a place where they serve alcohol, but he wasn't too reassured. Ultimately, I can't tell if my wife is actually doing anything to harm our marriage or if I'm just being paranoid. Another example is that I feel increasingly uncomfortable when my wife talks to people in public, especially males. In reality, my wife has always been amiable and talkative. It's nothing new for her to get into chats with waiters, salespeople, strangers in lineups, or people we ask for directions. The difference, frankly, is that I suspect the men she's talking to now are coming at the conversation from a different angle. These days, my wife looks like a fit, attractive woman, and I know what kind of headspace that puts a man into. Almost automatically, even if he's not intending to do anything wrong and it's not her fault. Rather, she isn't dressing in a provocative, attention-seeking way. There's no lipstick, eyelashes, or short skirts here. She's just wearing nice clothes that happen to flatter her skinnier figure. It can't be helped. My wife is thin now, but she has stayed big-chested. No one paid much attention to my wife's curves when she was heavier or wore JCPenney clothes. Now, I assume guys will check her out, even if she doesn't wear push-up bras, low-cut tops, or anything like that. It's just a result of being in good shape, but it's starting to grate on me, and that's where I'm at. It's not exactly clear what I should do next. I'm of the opinion that relationships thrive in an open, trusting environment. Also, breathing down my wife's neck with a lot of prying questions probably won't make her feel more invested in our relationship. So how do we raise these issues and not seem petty or controlling? There's no evidence or even probable grounds to prove that my wife has done anything wrong. So, what can I say to express my concerns without accusing her or backing her into a corner? Are there any subtle, respectful lines of questioning I can use that won't sound nosy or presumptuous? I'd like to put our relationship in context again. My wife is still the same lovely woman I married more than 60 of the time. It's only occasional moments when she says or does something out of character that leave a bad taste in my mouth. Please let me know what you think. Any feedback will be appreciated. Since I'm honestly struggling here apart from what's happening with my wife, I've always felt pretty good, despite the economy. I've advanced at work, and self-doubt has never been an issue for me. Ironically, between the two of us, my wife has tended to be the more neurotic one. She has an iPhone, so after checking her cell bill, if you find numbers you're unaware of or that seem suspicious, you can see her actual texts by accessing the backup file on the computer she syncs her phone with. This includes deleted texts. It's possible she could be chatting with people via third-party apps that leave no trail. If that's the case, you're out of luck unless you install spyware on her phone. I understand you don't want to dig into her private life based on paranoia alone, but the feelings you're describing sound like what I felt, and once I finally dug into the details, I found things I would never have imagined. Many people here have experienced similar situations. VR and car are good, so check those text logs and do your best to not show yourself as concerned and needy. Do your own thing and don't hang on her. Her new friends and potential male suitors aren't doing that, and you'll seem clingy. Just work out, feel more confident, and try to spend more time with your wife instead of feeling alone. How you act now will determine how your next months and years will play out. Good luck! I chose trap shooting over the motorcycle. Take your pick, shake things up, and don't try to make things the way they used to be. Like dicks, make them the way you want them. Talk about your relationship when she brings it up, but otherwise, do your own thing and prepare yourself for possible big changes. But one person changing in a relationship is bad. You need to keep up or outdo her. If she isn't on board, you were hosed to begin with. The Luxor responds, I'm still uncertain about the other ideas, such as talking to my wife about boundaries or snooping on her with digital equipment. As an engineer, I could probably get into her phone. My problem is the ethical decision to go ahead and look into her. Just look into her things? Your consensus seems to be that I should investigate her phone and internet habits as a first resort before bringing up any marriage concerns with her. If most people here believe that's the wisest option, I'll try bringing myself around to doing it. Our marriage so far indicates that my wife has very good boundaries about honesty, fairness, loyalty, and respect. Blatant flirting from other guys is new, but I believe her core values would allow her to shut them down easily. We have frequent movie nights at home, which I put effort into making as nice as possible. Going to restaurants happens about once per month, and going to concerts or parties with friends happens less often. A few times a year, I may glance at something unimportant on my wife's iPhone screen, like how much signal she has. I tried it, and my wife gave me a quizzical look. When she asked why I wanted to, I had to justify my question. My wife casually said, I have 4 bars, and that was it. I was the one who came across as acting weird. I'm getting closer to just investigating her phone bill. I'm also going to suggest we visit her gym together, so I can use the treadmill. I'll wait a day or two for the awkwardness of the iPhone question to subside. In the meantime, I've already purchased new racquetball equipment and gym clothes at Walmart. I should clarify that it's not a matter of my wife looking hot. She is still a 44-year-old woman who wears glasses and barely puts on makeup. She has certain impressive physical traits that have recently become more evident, but it's not like she's Jane Mansfield strutting around in a red dress. The gym is co-ed, and as far as I know, the instructors are women. Any anecdote I can remember about an instructor has involved references to she and her. I am aware that it's important to be a more confident, active, and interesting man now. The one qualifier is that my wife is some cheerleader type who swoons at the possibility of riding on the back of a motorbike. There's a reason why we gravitated towards each other in college. My wife was friendly, studious, and even nerdy. She liked intelligent, quirky guys. If I packed on too much muscle or took up too many macho hobbies, I'd actually be getting farther away from her ideal type. There also seems to be a misunderstanding with regard to how my wife presents herself. Recently, I mentioned that she looks healthier, more attractive, and wears more stylish, higher quality clothes. Somehow, this got exaggerated into a view that she's trying to look hot or sexy. Again, my wife does not wear short skirts, fake nails, low-cut tops, or even that much makeup. Her outfits for work are tasteful and professional. Believe it or not, I understand that this is a forum for raw conversations, so I'm not offended. I just don't think exaggeration will help to analyze my situation as accurately as possible. Having said that, I went ahead and looked at one of my wife's phone records while she was at the gym. At the gym yesterday, I'll leave out the description of how conflicted I felt looking through her things. In the end, there were a few texts and calls to different numbers that I couldn't match up with my own records. They're probably friends from class or work whose contact details I don't have on file. No one number stood out as being contacted more frequently than the rest, except for my own phone and our landline. The kids are out tomorrow night, so I'm considering using the opportunity to talk privately with my wife and ask some of the questions you guys suggest. We're supposed to have a movie night at home, but I think that can lead into a conversation where I ask about all the fun activities she's been involved in lately. Purely out of curiosity, I could ask whether they offer personal training services at her gym. I could also ask about the restaurants where she's had wine with friends. I could get her to tell me about these places in detail, in order to decide if we should visit any of them as a couple. Let me know if you can think of more casual, low-key questions like this that I can ask tomorrow. Apparently, my wife had 4 gym instructors from her different classes, one of whom was male. None of them did one-on-one training. Besides restaurants, my wife's friends have gone to at least one bar to get drinks, specifically a martini bar that's popular with the 30-plus crowd. I tried making a joke based on our son's comment that my wife's jacket smelled like cigarettes when she came back from one of these places. I wanted to see her reaction, but the joke sounded more insulting than funny. My wife suggested we just watch the movie at that point. By the time I mentioned visiting the gym together, the tone of the conversation had become strained. My wife must have sensed that my gym idea was related to other questions I had asked and seemed uncomfortable with me wanting to sit in on her workouts. I segued into a few lighter topics and then dropped the conversation entirely. So my wife went out last night after a tense chat on Friday. I didn't make a big deal out of it. I was going to be at a game with our son until early evening, so I couldn't really object without telling her. I did make a point of staying awake until she got home. She came in around 12 and I was still downstairs watching TV, which surprised her. I asked if everyone had a fun night, which also seemed to confuse her. When I playfully suggested our evening didn't have to end there, my wife said she was going to wash up and go to bed. I could join her when I wanted. I left it at that, not giving her a hard time about the shower. I did go to the closet, though, to follow up on what my son had been saying. Sure enough, my wife's jacket smelled like a bar. Not sure if that counts as great detective work on my part. By the time I finished my show and joined her upstairs, my wife was asleep. Another theme that bothers me here is that an athletic, self-help lifestyle should be incompatible with activities that involve drinking and smoking. My wife doesn't smoke, but given her recent interest in healthiness, it seems contradictory. Healthiness, shouldn't she, and her friends want to avoid any unhealthy places like a bar. As for my wife, I won't sit back and do nothing. It's a matter of choosing the lesser of two evils. Option 1, going beyond just checking my wife's phone records and actually planting a spy device in her car. Option 2, having an upfront conversation about the boundaries of our marriage, such as what social activities are not acceptable when we are not together. Both sides have valid points, but no one knows the situation better than me. Therefore, I will have to weigh the pros and cons and make a decision. Just to clarify, my wife went for a drink with a friend, who is married as far as I know. She returned at 12 a.m. Was I worried? Yes, especially after reading about others' experiences on this site. But I can assure you, she was not grinding and dancing during the night. Maybe others have dealt with similar situations in real life, but it's not realistic in my case. We're talking about a 44-year-old who had 2 left feet in college and would usually turn red when I got her to dance at a wedding. The more likely scenario is that she spent the night gossiping with another woman in her 40s at a nice restaurant. What upsets me is that we didn't spend the night together. I will definitely set aside time today to decide on a course of action. Either I will purchase a bio or come up with a list of concerns to discuss with my wife about boundaries. Part 1. Tonight I am taking my wife out for a romantic date. We will have Italian food at a cozy restaurant we both enjoy, then take a walk through the neighborhood, admiring the sights as we make our way downtown. I already have a nice bottle of wine chilling at home, and if all goes well, we will have more drinks when we return and hopefully get intimate later. For 2, I will also pick up a VAR. I found a local store where I can buy one with cash, so there will be no record of it being shipped to our home. Our date night went well. The food was delicious, even though I had to be assertive and ask my wife to put away her phone during the meal. The rain stopped just in time for our walk, making downtown feel fresh and vibrant with the lights from the buildings and streetlights. We skipped the chilled wine and went straight upstairs for a quick but satisfying session in bed. We were both so content that we fell into a deep sleep. Saturday nights are not officially for girls' nights out, but it seems to have become a trend recently. This weekend was a perfect example of how difficult it can be to stand my ground. How am I supposed to tell my wife she can't go see her friend when we had a lovely evening the day before? And I had plans to spend time with the kids that night. On Saturday, my wife ended up watching The Great Gatsby with the same friend from last week. Determined of prior relations instead, she texted me to ask if her late return home last Saturday had bothered me. She also asked how much longer I planned to stay up. This was unusual because my wife rarely texts me. I replied saying I would go to bed soon, but in reality, I stayed up reading so I could be awake when she got home. She arrived at 11:30 p.m. Earlier than last week, my first impression was that she was dressed nicely for watching a film, taking Machiavelli's advice. I quizzed my wife about the plot, the performances, etc. She could discuss them in detail, but was annoyed that I wanted her to do so. I asked whether she and her friend did any other activities after watching the movie. My wife explained that they got a coffee and talked about the film. She said it sarcastically, implying that she shouldn't need permission to do something so ordinary. The VAR was installed on Wednesday morning. Everything went smoothly, but now I worry that my wife will find the device and things will spiral downward. At least I've taken action though. How long does it usually take to pick up relevant information this way? I'll be able to play racquetball, as well as do cardio and free weight exercises at a campus near our house. This is better than trying to get involved at my wife's gym. She's already shown discomfort with my interest in her recreational activities, so I'd prefer to just stay in the dark while letting the VR do its thing. 1 week later, still nothing of interest happening on the VR, except my wife playing top 40 music in the car. Those recordings are difficult to listen to, for purely dreaded reasons. On weeknights, it's also hard to find time to hit the gym while still looking after the kids. I'll only put in one night this week, but hope to adjust my schedule so I can go more regularly in the future. I'm going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone by having a romantic date with my wife. The plan is to keep her from seeing other friends that night, which has become a pattern lately. I checked that the kids are okay doing their own thing and made reservations at a restaurant my wife has mentioned before. This way, there will be a solid reason for my wife to break any plans she's made with her girlfriends. I told her about it on Monday, and she agreed without much resistance. Things got worse the next day when I mentioned a date idea for Friday, watching a local theater company. My wife wasn't pleased. She asked if this was a little much on top of our Italian dinner, our walk downtown, and my sudden interest in buying sports gear and playing racquetball. She wondered what was going on with me. When I tried using self-improvement language to explain that I was making a choice to bring more excitement into our lives, my wife just smiled half-heartedly. For reasons I don't fully understand, this really bothered me. It ticked me off even worse as I kept thinking about it during the day. Which brings us to Wednesday. I was making dinner with the kids while my wife took a shower after her yoga class. I wanted to show my daughter an article from the paper, which I had left in her bedroom. My wife was still in the shower when I went upstairs. As I walked into the room, I noticed her phone vibrate. I chose to do something out of character and went over to look. I saw the tail end of a text message from Sylvia lol, just as a second text appeared. I read the second one in full. It's worth it when you get so many compliments. I grabbed the newspaper and went downstairs before my wife could find me looking at her phone. I still haven't discussed this with my wife. I know Sylvia is her girlfriend and the message was ambiguous enough, but I felt strangely preoccupied since reading it. I will have to work extra hard at being in a lively, confident mood for our date night. Our date was enjoyable enough. The restaurant was pricey, but my wife seemed to like the fusion food. She was a little on edge after a conversation we had a couple of days before. I had asked her about not wanting to go out on Friday without saying so directly. I was worried she still wanted to see her girlfriends. My wife said she didn't really feel like hanging out with anyone on Friday. She was off work and looked forward to relaxing around the house while the rest of us were at school. As long as she wasn't seeing friends, I thought this was reasonable and dropped the issue. Nothing bad happened on our date. There was enough tension in the air that we didn't get carried away by romance or have great bonding. My wife ended up staying home on Friday night, too, reading a book and doing work on her computer. My son made me aware of something this morning, however. His school let out early on Friday, so he came home around lunchtime to find my wife getting ready to go shopping. She was wearing a sweatshirt, no makeup, with her hair tied back in a scrunchie. Surprisingly, she was also wearing a short style of jean shorts. Maybe they're in fashion now, but my wife hasn't worn anything like that around us before. She seemed in a hurry to leave and didn't ask my son why he was home, what his plans were, or whether he needed a drive anywhere. He said she might have been upset that one of us came home when she was supposed to have the house to herself. He thought it was more likely she just felt embarrassed about wearing those shorts, though. The house was empty by the time my wife came home again. She spent the rest of the night upstairs, wearing sweat clothes and keeping to herself in our room. On another front, I contacted the divorce guy I know. He was keen to be in the area the next time my wife went out with friends, before their next outing. I subtly gathered as much information as I could from my wife. It wasn't easy, since she has become increasingly suspicious about my interest in her personal life. I found out where they were going, what time, and for approximately how long. Based on these details, my friend arranged to pass by and report anything out of the ordinary. My wife said they were going to a martini bar she had mentioned before. My friend got there early and parked across the street with a clear view of the entrance. He stayed in touch by phone, true to her word. My wife showed up around 9. She and another woman were dressed in upscale, somewhat conservative way. My friend was prepared to stay a while, since my wife told me she wouldn't be home before 11. An hour later, they were already leaving. My friend saw them go around the corner to another parking lot as he was starting his car. They appeared out front again. Both women were now missing their blazer jackets. Thanks, wearing only the blouses they had on underneath. He also noticed they were wearing taller shoes than when they first walked out of the bar. Within minutes, a taxi came to pick them up. My friend followed behind. They only drove a couple blocks before stopping in front of a nondescript building with a lineup outside. They waited in line for 10 minutes. Wife's friend went over to speak with a security guy up front. After a short conversation, she waved to wife, and they entered the building. My friend felt uncomfortable parking outside what was evidently a nightclub. The bouncers seemed vigilant, and he thought they would eventually notice him, based on the people in the lineup. He also didn't stand a chance of getting past security and seeing what was happening inside. We decided it wasn't a good idea for me to drive over there. Later, I said he should leave, and I would talk to wife when she came home. So wife got in shortly after 1. I pretended to be asleep, but was actually wide awake. She was back to wearing the outfit with the blazer and the normal shoes. She looked alert, not tipsy. I didn't show my hand. I acted like she woke me up and groggily asked her how the night went. Wife's response was brief. Good, we had fun. She got edgier when I asked, at the martini place. Here's another short answer. Yes, is that all right? Just the bar. She became irritated, almost to a level I hadn't experienced before. Wife replied with her back to me, changing out of her clothes and asking why I cared so much about every little move she made lately. I told her I just wondered how her night had been. Oh well, and we went dancing, she said, as though this were perfectly normal. And I was a jerk for interrogating her about it. I responded with a surprised look, which was fake. I then asked wife when going out dancing became something she enjoyed doing, which was a sincere question. She said something like, "It's called trying new things. Not everybody has to stay in their comfort zone all the time." The last comment sounded more like an attack on me, rather than an explanation of her behavior. For the sake of staying dark, I left it there. We went to bed, and I haven't had any tough discussions with wife since then. In fact, I've been semi-paralyzed. The agitation I felt has made it easier to work out at the gym. At least, I sat wife down for a talk last night. I got real with her. For the sake of our family. I said going out solo with friends had to stop. If she wanted to go to clubs, lounges, and places like that, we could go as a couple. Wife said she would rather not go at all. I told her that was fine. Initially, she got furious, even when I emphasized that it was for the good of our relationship and our kids. Later, she started crying. She told me, "They said you would act this way. You don't want me to have any life outside this safe, boring routine." I pointed out that I was happy to bring exciting activities into our lives, but we should do it together. No matter how logical my comments were, I knew she was going to leave the conversation unhappy. We agreed there would be no more coming home past midnight. She was going to continue her activities at the gym and occasionally socialize during the day, but no more girls' night outs. After reaching this compromise, my wife still went away soaking. She'd already canceled tentative plans with a girlfriend for the weekend, but seemed resentful about it and wasn't receptive to planning any dates with just the two of us. I will be patient, since I know my wife has to make a big adjustment now. Hopefully, the lack of girls' night outs will eventually bring her out of the fog, so she can focus on her marriage again. For my part, I am happy that I took a stand. I will let you know how everything progresses from here. I feel stuck. My wife's activities aren't exactly hurting anyone, and they do have positive aspects, so why do they give me negative feelings? Maybe my wife going dancing with a friend wasn't the worst thing ever. Maybe letting my friend follow them in his car was out of line. All I know is I'm doing the best I can to hold on to my marriage. It's understandable that my wife isn't in good spirits, since we've totally upended her social routine. She didn't want to do any of the activities I suggested this weekend. She just stayed home sleeping, reading, and working on her laptop. She's pouting, but I'm trying to deal with it in a better way. I'm not apologizing, getting mad, seeking approval, or rewarding bad behavior. I'm keeping an even keel, staying active, and treating her respectfully whenever she chooses to be in a good mood. One of the problems I can't fix by treating my wife in a detached way, however, involves her relationship with our kids. 2 examples have already cropped up this week. The first happened when my son and his friends spent Saturday night playing video games at home. By Saturday, my wife was starting to feel really insulted about not being allowed to see her friends. My wife sarcastically said, like it would be the worst thing if anyone ever got out of the house around here. After she left, my son's friend mentioned to him, "I never knew your mom was such a bee." It was a big reality check, since my wife used to be the queen of birthday parties and sleepovers for our kids' circle of friends. The second example happened when my wife and our daughter went shopping. According to my daughter, they were walking through the mall when a guy in baggy clothes made a joke. Passing the other way, he pointed to a store and said, "Hit that 2-for-1 sale, ladies. Since you're like sisters and like sharing clothes and crap." My daughter said he was overly loud and sketchy. Her natural response was to ignore the comment and keep walking. My wife, on the other hand, sarcastically told him, "Better get your eyes checked, buddy." My daughter started walking even faster, trying to show my wife the best way of dealing with creeps. At the mall, when she turned around, however, wife was still in the same place. And patiently listening to the creep, wife finally noticed her waiting up ahead and walked forward. Wife rolled her eyes, as if to say, "Could you believe that guy?" The baggy pants guy just stood there, openly checking wife out from behind. My daughter found it odd that wife seemed so upset about being accosted, but then walked away slowly. Wife acted like they were both equally annoyed by the guy's behavior. My daughter didn't explain that the more surprising part was actually wife's reaction. They never discussed it again. At the end of the day, wife appears to be complying with the terms we agreed to on Tuesday, and I am able to curb some of her sulking behavior by taking a firm, detached approach. Part of her stress could be getting displaced onto the kids, though which would be unfair as well as difficult for me to manage. I'm taking it one day at a time, and we'll just have to see what this week has in store. Answer my comment. The ending is coming tomorrow. Don't worry, it won't be a 10-part story, LAL, but I kind of enjoyed that story anyways. If you haven't watched the 10-part story, check it out on my channel, and I will bring you the ending of this story tomorrow morning. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for updates. You might be surprised by the ending.